Welcome to the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast.
Well, then Perez has got the better of it, and he looks to get the better of Schmeichel, and he's done it. Wilson's going to fall here for Alexis Sanchez. Henry, chance.
It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the half of wisdom, it was the half of foolishness. It was the epoch of comedy defending, it was the epoch of great goal scoring. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It is the Arsenal. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Happy Christmas, Happy Merry Boxing Day, St. Stephen's Day, Festivus, whatever you're celebrating. If you are not celebrating, maybe you're just celebrating Uniting, having to claw back a draw against Burnley, which just happened prior to recording this. But whatever it is, I hope you're having a lovely time. And in the miracle of Christmas, really, there's no Arsenal on Boxing Day to ruin your holiday. So there's that. What we do have to ruin your holiday is Paul. You can find him on Twitter at @PositiveMyPants. Hello, Paul.
Wow. What
and Clive intro. Is here. You can find him on Twitter at ClivePAFC. Hello, Clive.
Can't wait for you to interrupt me. Hello,
right.
hello.
How tooled up are you, Clive? I mean, are you really drunk, or are we just starting?
I'm 2 or 3 in, but I wanted the podcast a bit early because if you get me in 2 hours' time, there'll be 0 cents coming out of me.
I will be the arbiter of whether that would have made a difference. Let's dive right into it. So, look, it was 3-3. It could have been terribly worse. It could have been hilariously better. It's kind of hard to know what to make of it other than the fact that there are clearly some major problems with us. I thought the first half was the worst half of football we've played all season and maybe in a long time, and I include the half or the game at Anfield. But let's start with the big decisions, Paul, and the decision to stick with the back four, the decision to stick with Maitland-Niles, the way he set it up. I mean, I wasn't sure if I had any problems with it. What did you think?
Looking at the lineup.
Do you remember the lineup? Do you remember the game?
I do.
Your memory?
I mean, he kind of signaled it. I remember tweeting "wow" and then saying something about, though we kind of saw most of this coming. It was a wow just because we hadn't really seen this. So Maitland-Niles, I mean, that was a big move, even though we kind of saw it coming.
Someone's making an annoying rustling noise with their microphone. Knock it off. Keep going.
Could be me.
Yeah, yep, it's you. I hear it. Right. What are you doing?
Sorry, but how am I doing now?
You're doing great. Okay, let's hear it.
All right. So, I mean, I think that was the big decision, and that kind of matched with going with the back four to give the lads some kind of a chance. And we'd seen a bit of back fourness recently, even in the, if you want to call it, the B team. So I guess we saw this coming, and your subtraction by addition by subtraction. No Giroud available, so that kind of settled the front. And then Ramsey not available in midfield, was going to be Xhaka, Wilshere. So I don't really know what all the fuss was about.
Well, I think there's certainly a question of, I mean, you don't restore Mustafi to center back. You stick with Nacho Monreal there. You move Ainsley Maitland-Niles out to full back in a big game. I mean, and we can get on to his performance in a minute. But Clive, I mean, I think what interests me is the process, the manager's process, because middle of last season he switches to a back three, pretty much out of panic in a run of arguably the worst form in his career, or his Arsenal career anyway. Not really sure how he did it. Nagoya Grampus, or my grandpa's 8, whatever it is. Anyway, so he makes the switch and he sticks with it through the summer, and he reinforces, by buying a true wingback in Kolasinac. Made the Bundesliga Team of the Year in that position, and he sticks with it through this season, and he sticks with it through the Europa League, despite the fact that maybe it didn't fit the personnel, and it seemed that the first team plays a back three, and then he switches to a back four in the middle of the United game, and we look really bright in sort of devastatingly attacking them, although not clawing back the result, and suddenly we're a back four again. I mean, I guess my question to you is, what do you think the process is? What do you think the decision-making process was based on in switching to a back four? Is it the absence of Ramsey? Is it that the manager always wanted to go back to this? I could just start providing you the answers, or maybe I could just let you answer the question, which is probably the more professional thing to do. So what do you think the process is, and what do you make of the decision to switch to a back four now?
Well, firstly, I don't agree with the back four. I don't think our players look as comfortable in a back four as they used to do any longer. But there seemed to be a sway of opinion to go to a back four because I think primarily because of our midfield personnel, potentially because of Ramsey and potentially because of Mustafi coming out. I personally, I look at the players that we have, I look at their ages, I look at their comfort, and I think that certain players have looked more comfortable in the back three than they have done in the back four for quite a while, and we've just forgotten. So we yearn for the good old days, right? So, and we've forgotten that Koscielny and Mustafi probably haven't played in the back four together for, I can't remember when, probably early part of the year. We've forgotten that Monreal isn't really a centre-half. And so you put him in the two, you get what you get. And we've forgotten that our fullbacks have more work to do to get under the line of the centre midfielders and then to overload higher up. It makes them very vulnerable in the spaces behind, against what I think is quite a quick team in wide areas in Liverpool. So I'm not comfortable with the back four because I don't think we get as many comfortable players on the pitch in a back four as we do in a back three. But basically, formations are really covering up the lack of balance in the team. And I was thinking about this over the weekend. And just look at our team, right? So you got Cech, you say he's too old. You got Bellerin, half the crowd are waiting to kill because half of them hate him, half of them want him to succeed. Monreal, he's not really a centre-back, playing centre-back. Koscielny, is he fit enough to play in a two where he's got more spaces to cover? Maitland-Niles, we all know he's a centre midfielder. We put him on his wrong foot because he can run, and one-on-one he's excellent, but really he's a centre midfielder and he gets attracted. And then you look at our centre midfield and you look at, basically we have 3 number 10s playing in there. Xhaka wears number 10 for his country, Özil wears number 10 for his country, and Jack wears number 10 for Arsenal. And then we expect him to... But
to be fair, if you put that together, you have a number 30. So what do you think we get from our number 30? Yeah.
Well, from number 30, we get what we got. We get people, we got Jack and Xhaka having a personality match-off to see who can play in front of the other and stay there, not get back. And then you got Özil trying his best to adjust to what the other two are trying to do. And really, we've got the wrong balance in there. And I don't want to mention his name so soon in the podcast, but I find myself yearning for Coquelin because at least
I suspected that you yearn for the cock, and you know what?
I yearn for him.
It's all good.
I yearn for him because we know what he is. We know what he is, and he knows what he isn't. More importantly,
at least there's one player who doesn't think he's a 10. Didn't Xhaka say he was a false 10 recently?
Exactly.
Oh, he's a false something, that's for sure.
I mean, I'm sure we'll get into Xhaka. If we're not going to get into Xhaka, I will do it now.
No. We're going to do that next. You go.
Okay. And I'm just looking at this, and let's be serious, guys. We all love the team, but let's talk about the balance there for those players I've just mentioned. How do we expect to succeed with that many people playing out of position or asked to do different jobs in the position that they're in against a top level team with the league's top scorer in their team, with speed aplenty, with a front four that's unbelievable, and we sit there and we expect them to succeed? I tell you, that first half was one of the most painful experiences of my Arsenal watching life.
It's the worst I've seen. It was terrible. And look, I mean, Paul, here's the thing I don't get. Look, Spurs and Liverpool are not the same, but at least in terms of what they want to do and the areas they want to make you uncomfortable and the pressure they want to put on you, there are similarities. And we had a game plan for Spurs that seemed to make sense. We totally went away from it for Liverpool, fine. But we couldn't keep the ball. And the one thing you cannot do against Liverpool is turn the ball over. You just cannot turn the ball over in your half. You cannot be sloppy with your passing. And that's really what we were doing. I guess my question to you is, what was the plan in that first half against Liverpool, if you could see one, and where were the breakdowns?
So, I mean, I don't really know what the plan was beyond the obvious, what we've seen before. I mean, we've faced Klopp's teams in the past. We've faced Dortmund with a similar lineup, different personnel, maybe with Arteta and Ramsey in the midfield. And you could say the plan was to ride out the storm for 50, 60 minutes, stay in the game, be 1-1 or 1-0 down. And then as they tire, which in fact they did, we come into it and we get the next goal or we get the next 2 goals but they could have been 3-4 up by halftime. They should have been at least, you would say, 2-3 up by halftime, which would have really should really have put them past us. We didn't know there was going to be that 5 minutes, but it should really have put them past us. I thought it was interesting. Sometime in the week leading up to it, Wenger talking about formations, and he talked about playing a 3 or a 5 at the back or a 4, and it just kind of struck me the 5 at the back, which to me, I guess I just lumped that with the 3. But even in Wenger's mind, there are different ways of playing the 3, and to me, the 5, a more defensive lineup. And kind of digging in, okay, it doesn't suit our ego and playing at our stadium, but it might have been the practical choice to ride the storm out a little better, because, you know, it didn't take much of a crystal ball to see we were going to be stretched here. And the Spurs model, we didn't have Mustafi, who's a good distributor, so it might be arguable who was going to put in those diagonals across to Xhaka as we did against Spurs.
We could have had him. I mean, presumably. Maybe he didn't feel he was fully ready, but we could have had him. Yeah,
that's true. So we'll never quite know kind of how touch and go it was, but you could see why maybe he maybe thought Mustafi wasn't quite ready, so, you know, maybe give a little concession there, but maybe it was worth that play, that chance. But it seems like the pendulum has swung now, and he's back to he always made it clear he wasn't a back 3 guy in terms of Wenger's philosophy. He's a back 4 guy. He wants a more attacking team. That's who he is. These are 2 very attacking managers. But sometimes you just got to accept that Liverpool onslaught for the first 30, 40, 50 minutes is, you're just going to have to live with it.
I guess, but like, you don't have to play into it, right? I mean, this is the problem. It exonerates. Yeah. Look, if you want to exonerate the manager, which we can debate on, you know, the approach and the lineup and the formation, then you have to be critical of the players who could not execute the simple, who could not. I mean, surely they will have known that you have to have ball security against Liverpool, especially in your own half. And none of them did. And I mean, Xhaka and Iwobi were shocking. And I guess, Clive, you know, for me, that first goal that we gave up to Liverpool was really hard to watch, because watching Xhaka and Jack try to run with Coutinho, I mean, good God, it was depressing. It was like they were dragging weights behind them, and you just can't have that little range and mobility in central midfield and expect to compete, you know, especially against a team that you know is going to be harassing you like that. And it just exposed the weakness that we've been talking about all season. And I wonder a little bit, I mean, is Xhaka a terrible buy? Now, let me emphasize something. I'm not saying he's a terrible player. He's clearly not a terrible player. But was he a terrible buy? And what I mean by that is, it seems pretty clear at this point that the manager is unsure of how to use him, unsure of who to pair him with. I mean, he's looked nominally effective with Ramsey, but I don't think we would say he was excelling. The manager first came out and said he was a box-to-box midfielder, which is like, I don't know how you could look at that guy and have even the slightest inkling that that's what he is. I mean, is Xhaka struggling because he has been put into a position that is just not suited for him with the people that are surrounding him?
Yep, he's struggling for a number of reasons, in my opinion. And I went to the game on Friday, and I was to say to Paul offline, it really does. I sort of go to games once a month, and when I go, it's almost like seeing a long lost relative you haven't seen for a while, and they've grown and they've changed. And when you go that infrequently, you can really see clearly and feel clearly what's changed since the last time. And all this chat about Xhaka online, I've stayed really quiet because I like the player. I generally like the player. I like what he can be. I really was interested to see him play for Switzerland and see how he was used there. And I thought, okay, what you really are, you are a pivot in the 2. But what we ask you to do, we ask you to play deep in a 2, but your partner's really ahead of you. So when he plays for other clubs, he basically has somebody next to him, and they pivot. And that's why I've always felt that in a 4-2-3-1, his best partner was somebody quite similar to him, and his best partner with me is El Neni. Funny enough, someone who just does a similar job, but just on the other side of the pitch in a pivot. And when we bought him, that's what we were playing, that system. And then we changed and went to the back three, and then the philosophy of pushing on, which I agree with, has exposed him. But what really disappointed me about his game on Friday night was the positions that he took up. Mm-hmm. It's quite obvious that Jack is a centre midfielder, probably a bit more attacking than Xhaka, a bit less physical presence, quite good in tight areas. And I think he's got more layers of passing, cuter passing, can stop the ball on a dime in shorter spaces. But Xhaka decided, well, I'm going to push on. I'm going to play the Ramsey role. I'm going to be the one. And he pushed on sometimes to the left wing. And I mean, I was in despair. I mean, the quickest transition team in the league, and we've just got our centre midfield completely open, just with Jack in the middle trying to track. And I don't know if you count, I'm sure you guys saw it, but how many times did you see Jack and Xhaka running back almost side by side?
Well, for their first goal, that was it. And to call it a race is a disrespect to people that run races.
Exactly, well said. But basically, as soon as you see that, we got a problem. That means they're doing the same things. They're making the same run. They're covering the same spaces. They were literally 2 yards apart. And that happened on more than one occasion. Elliot, I'm telling you, it was almost like, who's going to have the strongest ego so I can play closer to the opposition goal, so I won't be embarrassed in open spaces when Liverpool run through us. And what really stood out for me was Xhaka's lack of positional responsibility, his lack of team play, and he was getting absolutely killed by the crowd.
Well, isn't that why you put like a Maitland-Niles next to Xhaka who has those recovery runs? I mean, at this point, he needs someone next to him who's got speed to waste, who can make those recovery runs. I mean, Coutinho is not a fast player, and he ran by them like they were running in treacle. It was terrible. I mean, I just think at this point, and I'll just give you one more sentence on this really, Clive, do we have to acknowledge that maybe Xhaka was the wrong buy for the squad we had?
Not for what we had, but now Jack has appeared. You're looking at Jack, you're thinking, hold on a minute here. He can play the similar passes. He's got more ability on the football. He can actually get a couple of tackles in. He can get back into his box.
Four dribbles.
He can pair up with Mesut Özil. He's more agile. Okay, he's only a step quicker, maybe not even sure if he is a bit quicker, but he seems to understand the position really well. So you look at the two players thinking, okay, neither of them can really hold our midfield, but now you're looking at their attributes, and I'm thinking, hold on a minute here. Which one is better? And on the day, there was no contest.
But I'll say this.
None whatsoever.
At the time that Xhaka was bought, I guess the exculpatory evidence is that at the time Xhaka was bought, there was no suggestion Jack was ever coming back or could be trusted to come back. And I still think it's an open question whether Jack is the way forward. I think what is clear is that Xhaka is not the way forward unless we find the right system and formation and partner for him. And look, if you want to build your squad around Mesut Özil and his unique talents, or Alexis Sanchez and his unique talents, that's one thing. Building your squad around the talents and limitations of Granit Xhaka is a totally different discussion. But I want to get off Xhaka and get on another player who I want to kill for a minute, and that's Iwobi. Paul, look, Alex Iwobi is starting to remind me of Oxlade-Chamberlain. In fact, they both have the same name. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is they're eye-catching when they're on the ball, right? Maybe in slightly different ways, but Iwobi has good touch, good control, has the ability to get out of tight spaces, and yet he is asleep on the pitch. He is someone who switches off, who is positionally totally unprepared for the job he has to do. He is someone who all too often gets the final ball wrong. And this was a game for him to keep it simple, keep it ticking over, be that sort of metronomic player that could help keep the ball out of harm's way for him. He was incapable of doing that. When he was off the ball, he was totally inert. Did you see it the same way with Iwobi?
Look, I think that's terribly harsh on Iwobi, apart from in this game.
Okay. I see what you mean. Okay, but so then let's do this. Instead of making grandiose statements, he's a player that's losing my support. You may have noticed, but in this game,
Yeah, no, in this game he was shite. I don't really know why. I mean, he was. I guess he spent a lot of time over on the Bellerin wing, but there's no great reason why he was that shite. I mean, you can say his options were cut down, blah blah blah, but so many times his own frustration with himself.
There was a moment in the first half, Paul, where who's on the left, Sané, has the ball on the left with Bellerin checking him, and someone comes over to make it 2. It might have been Firmino or Coutinho, it was one of them. And like Bellerin's looking at these two players, and he's looking for Iwobi, like, can you please come help me out? And Iwobi's like walking into the frame while Bellerin's trying to manage this 2-on-1 situation. I mean, that kind of stuff is just basic effort.
Yeah, this seems, for whatever reason, this seemed a game above Iwobi's level. Now, the last game we played, who we play last?
Before Liverpool?
Yeah.
I can't believe you don't remember. It's clearly that was in the cup. That was in the cup. Did we also? No, we played someone in the league that we beat. We beat someone in the league.
Newcastle.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I thought he was poor against Newcastle. I watched it again. Actually, he had quite a bit to do with what we did that was good. But if you just kind of ask me a knee-jerk reaction, I definitely think he's been off the pace recently. But I think he was decent against Newcastle when you go back and look at it. In this game, I think I'd have to watch it maybe a fourth time to decide he was good.
He looked afraid, Paul. He looked afraid, mate.
No, it was a game beyond him. But I did mention the Bellerin thing. I'm sure we'll get around to the positives at some stage, but it's funny how you look at a player like Bellerin and you just get used to him. Like, we'll talk about Maitland-Niles and we probably say that in large part he had a really good game. But you go back and you take Bellerin for granted and you take him as kind of, it's all got a bit vanilla. He actually had a really good game.
I thought he was one of our few bright spots. Yeah.
yeah. So it's
and
funny,
the stats
isn't
bear
it?
that out. By the way, we're not going to get a Scott section because just there's a lot of behind the scenes challenges to the recording that we're doing today with the holidays and all. But I mean, I looked at the PPVA and XG chain and all that stuff, and as usual, Bellerin was right near the top there.
Yeah, and I don't think Mane had the best game. I think he's a little off his form, but that wing was the more controlled of the two. And as we go through our defenders, to me, and our midfield, defensively, there were two players who I think had big games that either didn't get the credit or got ripped unfairly. And I think that's Cech and Bellerin. So a little props to Bellerin while we're going through all our shortcomings. I actually think to actually have put in a solid game in the middle of all of that, it is a testament to his maturing.
Yeah, and look, it's funny because the players that wind up getting killed in games like this are the defenders, and you see people saying maybe it's over for Koscielny, and I have a lot of sympathy for Koscielny. There was that play where he slipped and they were in, and they had a 2-on-1, and Cech bailed us out. But like, the reason he slipped is he was having to cover the space that both players were running into. Liverpool had two players running into acres of space, and Koscielny was like trying to cut the angle off to try to block both runs. And too often we have our defenders being asked to cover spaces in situations that a single defender can't cover, and then they get killed when they don't do it right. For that, for their first goal, everyone said, "Oh, Koscielny, he should have closed down. He gave him too much." I'm sorry. You put any center back up against Mohamed Salah and say, get tight to him, get touch tight to him, they're going to get beat off the dribble. That's not a situation your center back should find himself in, touch tight to a dribbly, quick winger inside the box. I think he played it the way he had to. He tried to cut off the angle. He tried to stay in front of him, wait for help to arrive. The help, which was Jack and Xhaka, didn't arrive because they were, on their tricycle trying to get back there. I'm sorry, it's just the players that wind up getting killed are the ones who are being put in untenable situations, and the players who are hiding, like Xhaka and Iwobi, and to some extent even Jack, they get off the hook. And I want to get your take on Iwobi, Clive, because you said you have a stadium story. I'm curious to hear it. I also think we should get to the second half where things turned around quite a bit and talk about Maitland-Niles' day as well. But what did you make of Iwobi?
Well, he looked as Paul nailed it. The game was too big for him. right? So if I'm watching a game of Arsenal football and I'm yearning for Theo Walcott and Francis Coquelin, I'm wondering what the question is, right? What the issue is, because that is exactly what was required in this game, right? A proper, Maitland-Niles did really well. Let's be honest, we need a proper left back in there, right? So, and if we're going to play somebody right, we need to threaten their right hand side. They had a guy called Robertson playing left back, absolutely awful, and Coquelin just for balance, right? So we didn't threaten them. Iwobi looked scared. The problem is he's a player that's out of form. Guess what? It's going to happen to him again. It's going to happen to all the other players on that pitch. It's how you're managed. Wenger has a tendency to play some players through bad form, and just kill some players immediately the moment they have a bad game. He's played Iwobi through bad form. He did it last year as well. He hasn't worked out the ability when to take him out. I wouldn't minded in seeing come on for the last 20 minutes just for some security on the ball. But this was not a game for him to start. It had to be a game where you set a tone, be much more aggressive, and run them backwards. Alexis doesn't want to run in behind very much anymore. Lacazette does, but no one passes in the ball. And so we need that other player to run in the behind. And Iwobi's not it. And because he's not it, the crowd are turning on him. I mean, Elliot and Paul, I've got to tell you something. That stadium, when it went 2-0, was going bad. And when I mean bad, I mean hatred. At half-time, I sort of walked over and I knew where Tim was sitting. I was only about 10 seats up to the left on me. So I walked over to him and we had a chat. And I said to him, mate, what do you think? And he said, that's the worst half of football I've ever seen at Arsenal in the first half.
I totally agree.
And the reasons why, there were players walking around the pitch. Alexis walking, Iwobi walking.
I called Xhaka a coward on Twitter, and I got killed for it a little bit. But the reason I called him a coward is because when we went down, he just hid. He totally hid from the game.
He hid. So what he did, he ran into areas where it wasn't possible for him to recover back into. So I'm going to push in here. I'm going to push you in there right back. Oh, well, I can't get back. So it's not my fault. Who's going to cover me? I mean, it was like that. A coward's performance. You could not put it any better. And I'm looking at this thinking, oh, my God, we are broken. I actually said to Tim, what are we going to do in the podcast? We're broken. This is really bad. I have never seen something. You can ask him. I don't mind saying it. I could not see. It's only 1-0, Paul. It's half time. It's 1-0. I said, this is bad. We are completely broken as a club. 4 or 5 players are not trying. They're walking around. They don't care about tactics. They don't care about what they're being told. And I'm looking at this.
Ruined our podcast.
And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, there are 4 or 5 that really do care, like Koscielny, but they can't cover the gaps, and they are breaking in front of our eyes. Monreal then broke, and I'm looking at this thinking, we're in trouble. And I suppose that's the beauty of football. You never know what's around the corner. Because I can't remember being as low as that since 2004 Champions League quarterfinal when Wayne Brish scored that goal for Chelsea. That was my lowest moment for watching Arsenal, and this is probably my second lowest.
Lower than Paris?
Yeah, I was in Paris, but again, that was one of the lowest. I was in Paris, but this was bad because in Paris we tried. We were unlucky. We tried. We were together. We reached the pinnacle. We didn't make it, but this was broken. This was a broken club. I have to
agree. At the end of that first half, I was so low.
The only thing I will say, you guys, is it's funny, and I tweeted this. I'm not a Pollyanna or one for a bright side, as you know, but the thing about Liverpool is, they don't concede a lot of chances, but as we know statistically, the chances they concede are really, really, really high-quality chances. And so the only bright side, for silver lining for me, was we're only 1-0, and they're going to give us 2 or 3 chances, and they're going to be really presentable chances, so there's a chance. Now, realistically, had we kept playing the same way, we should have lost by 4, 5, 6, 7, name the number. And, quick mention for Petr Cech, who gets killed, but, I don't understand why Cech doesn't get more credit, because this season, sure, he's had some 50-50 situations where he hasn't been brilliant. He's saved our ass, too, and he did save our ass in this game. And, we expect, look, he's not David De Gea, fine, but he is a good, reliable keeper who has kept us in some games, which is more than we could say of what we've had for a long, long time. But
and hey, David De Gea conceded a pretty stupid goal by staying on his goal line in basically the same fixture
Yeah, no.
On the same day, the following day.
Yeah, no, that's true. The only thing I'll say about De Gea is his tactic is to stay on his line, and more often than not, you see the result works for him. So, his process is his process. But anyway, look.
Okay, but the only thing I'll say is Cech got caught because he came off his line for the third goal, where he puts up the big hand, and he still almost saved it. So, it is horses for courses.
Yep.
And Cech gets slaughtered because he's like right on the guy. It's a hard shot. It's a quick reaction, but he still almost gets it.
We wouldn't have been in the game at that point if it hadn't been for him. So I think it's a little bit, crazy to go overboard on him. But so let's do this.
Elliot, can I just clarify quickly just what I mean by broken? I mean, it's only 1-0. Well, you may think I'm being overdramatic about.
I don't.
How
I think it's the worst half of football I can remember. And by the way, I think it was worse than the reverse fixture.
Elliot thinks you're being under-dramatic.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, the reason why, when I talk, we all love our club, right? We all love watching the team. And part of it is a unity factor, unity between the fans, the players, between the players. And that's what I mean by broken. There was no unity from the fans to the players. I mean, there was hatred coming down on them. There was no unity amongst the players. And they were quitting on each other. And that, for me, forget if it's 1-0, could have been 10-0 for me. It didn't matter. To see that, it could have been 0-0. And I would have still felt the same. Because to hear and see what I saw, it generally shocked me. And that's in the land of Twitter, where we see all the reactions and the extremities. It generally shocked me to see the disunity. And I thought we're in big trouble here. And Tim agreed with me at the time.
Well, look, all right. So at the end of the day, I mean, they get the 2-0 lead. It's looking pretty bleak. And amazingly, we start playing in the areas we need to be playing and stop playing in the areas we don't want to be playing. And maybe Liverpool made the mistake of taking their foot off the press pedal just enough that we were able to get out. And when we stopped shooting ourselves in the foot, which has been the story of the whole season. Let's not say this was the first game like this. Everything that's gone wrong for us this season has in some senses been self-inflicted. We've been giving the ball away, and that was the story in this game as well. But there's that 5-minute period where we get 3 goals, and we get it, through the players you kind of expect, right? Alexis, Lacazette to Ozil. I mean, the player, and then not so much with Xhaka, but I mean, it's some good football. I worry with the Xhaka goal only because it's good outcome from bad process, and he needs to stop shooting from that distance. I don't think that's the way forward for us, but credit to him, he gets the goal. And unfortunately, the one thing I will say is I think the fact that he gets that goal kind of transformed the discussion around him after the game, where it kind of seemed like unfair to criticize him, despite the fact that I thought he had a terrible game. But Paul, so in the period where we wind up getting the goals, you saw the fight, you saw the energy, you saw the enthusiasm. The thing I think is interesting is it was sort of a bad 5 minutes for narrative, right? Because you have Alexis, who everyone's saying isn't trying, like scoring from an exceptional effort and diving header to get in ahead of the defender and score. You have Lacazette and Ozil, who had kind of been out of the game, linking up brilliantly for that sensational hit into the ground finish that Ozil has now turned into a thing. I don't even know how he does that. And then Xhaka, who'd been terrible, scoring from range. I mean, to you, what changed in the pattern of play that allowed us to get that foothold?
I think there's a few things. I think the inevitability that Liverpool, having got their second goal and having kind of burned it pretty hard, we're going to relax a little bit, tire just that little bit to allow our quick passing and quick moving to start finding some gaps. I don't think we should, for all the implied criticism of the manager, I don't think we should forget that he's very good at halftime speeches by all account. And Bellerin spoke up about that, basically saying he rallied the troops. Henry V kind of speech, once more onto the breach, dear friends, all that kind of stuff. And I think those 3 factors, I think Liverpool took a little breather. I think they thought they had this thing wrapped up and they'd bang in a few more. And but the major factor in all of that was Ozil. I think, I've been very critical of him just a couple of months ago. I'd kind of had my fill of him. He's been fucking sensational. Absolutely sensational. and a leader. You know, Tim talked about the technical leader. I think he's even been more than that. I think you can, for all that talk about you shouldn't judge Ozil by his body language. It's strange. You can judge him by his body language now because it's really strong, really powerful. So, in a way, I've never bought that you don't judge a player by his body language. You absolutely do. You can see Ozil. You can see where he's at. You can see that he's pushing this team on. When his shoulders are back, he's looking up. He just has a different aura about him, a different energy about him, even when it's not going well. And it wasn't going well, as we all know. And you can look at him. His head's up. He's looking around. He's engaged. He's finding solutions. The Lacazette back heel, that's his second time he did that in the game. He did the first one to Ozil in the first half. Ozil was through right on goal, right on Mignolet. So, you know, there's lots of great little interplay there. Bellerin going up the wing he had a few 1-2s and crosses into the box. So pressure was building. We were doing the right things, but it was certainly a blistering period of 5, 6, 7 minutes where the energy swing was there. But you know, Paul. I mean, to me, it's like it seems so obvious to say it, but we just started playing in the right areas. I mean, Clive, is it really that simple? And maybe, you know, the point to Paul that they gave us just a little bit of a way out of the pressure cooker in our own half, and once we were able to do that, we saw where their weaknesses. I mean, that's not a good midfield. It's not a good defense. If you can get past the press, you can play them.
Yeah, they're awful at the back, and all we did in the second half was we played a little bit quicker, like we always do, a bit more intensity, and then we conceded the second goal, and I thought, okay, here we go. This is going to get bad. This is really going to get bad. But this is what I always look for. You know, when I judge players, I look what they do in adversity, and I look if they can feel the game, if they can do what the game requires. And this is why I never criticise Bellerin at all, because 2-0 down, the easiest thing to do is stand in at right back and just basically don't do anything. I'm going to hold my side. We're 2-0 down. I'm not going to get embarrassed. But he pushes on, crosses the ball in, and we get the first goal. Bit of momentum. Again, Xhaka gets the ball. He tries to head it back pass in the middle of midfield, and it gets cut out. We get it back. And at that time, you can actually see on TV people coming out of their seats to admonish him, literally walking down steps to give him some stick on the side where where I was sitting. And basically, he gets the ball in the middle of midfield. It pops up, and he smashes it in. And his celebration was really aggressive. And suddenly the momentum's there. And for 5 minutes, we are perfection. I mean, we literally are perfection. And suddenly this team in front of us that was literally jogging through us, I've gone. They've completely gone. And Özil senses it. He finds space, pops it in, back heel, goal. And again, the noise in the stadium was immense. And if we could have got the fourth, we'd have won that game. Right? We had a couple of... Xhaka had a shot. We had to cross the Bellerin into the middle of the box. Didn't quite happen. And I'm thinking, we're going to win this. And then we it was like a firework just went out. And we thought, oh, crikey, we've come back and we're not quite as good as we think we are. And they wrestled it back from us. But from a game perspective, I could not see that coming. I wouldn't have given it 0.5%. I only give about 1%. We didn't even score 1, let alone 3 in 5 minutes. I mean, it was just incredible to swing. And an emotional experience that I've not seen much like. And this team, I mean, how do you analyze it? How do you do that? How can you be that bad in the first half and produce 5 minutes of absolute perfection that has given everyone their Christmas memory, right? So it's amazing. That's why we all love it, isn't it? That's why we all go. So.
Can I just jump in on a couple of things in terms of factors for that 5 minutes? I think it was a 5 minutes in which 2 players who were able to play out of the back, unlike most of our players, Maitland-Niles and Wilshere in particular, were highly impactful, pushing us forward, pushing us out of our final third and the middle of the field, pushing us forward. Jack was all over the place intercepting. So his energy levels have really come up. I thought there's a really interesting photo of Jack giving Sanchez a bollocking before giving the
saw
ball
that.
away.
I saw that. Yeah, definitely saw that.
Yeah,
and Jack is almost being held back.
Yeah, I think with Jack, he's got the personality to handle Sanchez, and I know the rumours that Ramsey and Sanchez don't get on, but it actually affects the team negatively because they don't literally want to pass to each other. But Jack seems to have got respect from Sanchez, although I don't think Sanchez respects very much about Arsenal players or the club by the way he behaves at times. But Jack gets a bit more out of him, and they do combine. And he's got a personality to say, "I'm not having you," and so has Ramsey, to be fair. And it's probably part of the fractions in our centre midfield. But yeah, Jack is a player, mate. He is not messing about. He says, give me that ball in here. This is mine. I'm going to get this team going, and you lot will dance to my beat. And then Özil and him almost like in tandem. And I thought that's how we wrestled it, Paul. I thought those two got on the ball and started causing real problems and shaking Liverpool's physical and technical confidence. And once we did that, there was a gap in quality, and we had it, but we just couldn't sustain it.
Yeah, and I think going back to that thing I always quote of a couple of years ago where Wenger said Jack needed 8 starts. Jack's had about 10 starts. Okay, a couple of them were Europa Leagues and Carabao Cups, but he's probably just hitting takeoff speed right now, and he can't cover the midfield the way we need him to, but he's getting close. So maybe not against the top teams, maybe not against City and Liverpool, he probably doesn't quite have the legs to cover the midfield. But for maybe a lot of these upcoming games, he might be just the ticket.
He's going to have to not be what he was in the first half of this game, if you know what I mean. And maybe that's about finding the right tandem. Well, let's get on to Maitland-Niles just real quick in more depth. I mean, Paul, what'd you make of the performance? And I mean, is it time for him to step into midfield? I mean, is that really what we need from him? Because look, you also have to wonder where say Kolasinac's career is headed at this point, don't you?
No, you do. Let me
rephrase that. Yeah, I think you have to wonder what the plan is if Maitland-Niles is going to stay at fullback. I mean, the manager seems happy with him there.
He does, but there's the Mo Salah effect. There's the fact that he can't drop a young player who's just had a couple of stormers, so he's going to let him have a little bit of run. There's the fact that Kolasinac is definitely out of form, that he had some injury fitness stuff. So maybe you're right, but I think it's a little too early to judge those tea leaves. I suspect Kolasinac will come back in and be...
Well, he'll definitely play through the festive period. But all right. So more importantly, what about Maitland-Niles? I mean, he looked in over his head maybe initially at the start of the game, but I thought he actually wound up having a fairly assured performance and an influential performance by the end of the game.
I thought what was really, really, really important about Maitland-Niles in terms of his future was his coolness on the ball, which I haven't always seen. I've watched everything I can of him, which isn't necessarily that much. I watched the England under-20 World Cup run where he played a couple of games. I've watched anything that's ever been available on the Arsenal channel or the live games of the younger teams he's played in, the under-23s, etc. It's still not a lot that you get to see. But he's not always, even at that level, he's not always that cool on the ball. His decision-making, those balls across the midfield that we've seen from time to time. I thought he was just excellent in this. He was cool on the ball. He played the right pass each time. Every time he played out from the back, he got it right. And in particular, his weight of pass, it seems like a small thing, but let's get back to one of our favourite players, Coquelin. Where we debate his passing, and you compare and contrast that to Ainsley Maitland-Niles. It's not so much that Coquelin doesn't make his passes, it's that everybody, you and the player on the receiving end of the ball, is nervous as to whether the speed's going to be right, whether it's going to get to him, etc. When you see Maitland-Niles pass, he's picking the right pace all the time. He's like a golfer hitting the perfect put. He's just getting the pace, which means that the guy receiving the ball, A, starts to relax, B, gets the ball where he wants to at the time he wants to. It's just a different animal than a Coquelin, who may be, getting 88, 92% of his passing done, but the people around him are kind of nervy, unsure, and so the game doesn't flow because it's not coming to them on the right foot with the turn at the pace. I thought he stroked that ball around deliciously, moved to receive the ball, helped us play out. And when you start looking at that, you start thinking, what could that be in midfield alongside a Xhaka? How might that calm down the midfield?
Yeah.
And we had a really good WhatsApp chat between all of us, which was basically coming to the conclusion, who could, if that's the Maitland-Niles we had in midfield, and that's a projection, right? We've seen young players come and go, but if he were to live up to the billing that he's due from how he played in that game, who could he not partner in midfield and be the balance to? Well, I mean, he could balance out Ramsey, Xhaka.
We've got a lot of sameness there, right? I mean, Xhaka, Jack. I mean, no matter what you think of these players, and everybody has their favorites, right? As you pointed out, we have the number 30. I think the question is, if they're all very same, Maitland-Niles has the qualities that they don't have. And look, whatever you think of Coquelin, and I will acknowledge he is an elite tackler and an elite defensive action guy, but he does not have elite pace or recovery pace. So I think you still need what Maitland-Niles offers that Coquelin doesn't, which is that ability to cover huge swaths of the pitch that are often left exposed by the way we want to play.
Coquelin's key strength in that area is his first 2 or 3 steps are electric. Like he's like a tiger pouncing. So I always feel a bit. It's a little unfair to say he doesn't have recovery speed, in that sometimes snuffing it out right at the get-go is what it's all about. But the classic moment where he bounced off Hazard's ass for that goal and got left behind where he didn't quite have the pace. One of the things I thought was delicious about Maitland-Niles, and Clive's got to be just chomping to get in on Maitland-Niles as the other founder member of the Ainsley Maitland-Niles overrating club.
I want him to start more just so I can continue to hear you struggle to say his name, mainly.
Yeah. Conservative. His balance, he's got so much speed, and he uses that in a couple of ways. He spends that dividend in a couple of ways. One of the ways is he has beautiful balance. So you saw that against Salah a couple of times, where just because you can keep up with Salah doesn't necessarily do you that much good because he's so clever, so quick. But there's one particular time he runs back and nudges Salah off the ball. It's Salah who gets unbalanced, even though he's controlling the play with the ball. Maitland-Niles has beautiful balance. It's not just speed. He's got strength. He's got power. He's got balance. He's got an assurity about him. I don't know if that's a real word. And his comfort on the ball. That's a really good package. But Clive made a great point about him being drawn to the ball as a midfielder, and that was his kind of downfall in the couple of moments in this game. Everything else was great. I mean, Wenger's gamble paid off in the sense that everything he wanted him to do one-on-one versus Salah worked when he had his eye on Salah, but there were a couple of times he let that go. Yeah,
well, so Clive, I mean, obviously I want you to jump in on Maitland-Niles, but I think the question becomes now, given that we have Nacho Monreal, given that we have Sead Kolasinac, and given that Maitland-Niles is
little trouble with that name, did you?
Sead Kolasinac? Not even remotely. I would say, look, we are staffed effectively enough at left back / stroke left wing back, and Maitland-Niles at best is a patchwork solution there because I don't think we think that's his natural position. So is it time for the manager to look and say, I can't keep playing all these number 10s in midfield, and this is the solution? Is Maitland-Niles the fix for him? I mean, look, we're always looking for a magic bullet to fix what's wrong with Arsenal. Is this the one, finally?
It could be. I mean, if the manager can play Coquelin as sweeper at Man City, then surely he can play Maitland-Niles as a holding midfielder. Surely he's made for the position. And the biggest compliment I can give him is that one-on-one in the first 15 minutes versus Salah. There was no contest, right? He killed him. And this is when Salah then moved off of his side and then moved into the middle. And Maitland-Niles was then left with literally no one to mark. And that's when it becomes a problem. That's when you see the lack of experience, because now he's looking for a job. What do? I've lost the man I was detailed to mark. He's gone inside to Koscielny, and so now people are appearing in his hole at random, and he's going to mark them. He's going to mark them, and they're popping in behind him, and that's not his fault. That's just experience, right? That needs somebody next to him to say, you stand next to me, don't move. Just hold this hole. They're trying to pull you around. And this is where we're lacking. We're lacking that tactical experience and knowledge. And they just popped in behind him and stretched Koscielny out and caused us a problem, right? So it wasn't his fault. He gave the maximum. They targeted him on diagonals. He's not very strong in the air. On crosses, I think as the ball's coming face on and it's just a straight ball, he can head it back. He's tall. He's about 6 foot. He's built perfectly, right? He's a supreme athlete. And if you watch him when he receives the ball, Paul, another thing to look out for, his head doesn't go down on the ball. So he's very straight backed as he receives it. And that's quite unerring. As if you're somebody going to mark someone, all you try to do is get their head down. When someone's straight backed, not looking at the ball and just stroking it, sometimes it looks like he's got time. He looks composed. Well, he's got time because he's spooked the player, because he receives it on both feet and he just passes it and he never looks at it. And so you're thinking, well, I'm not going to go in there. It's going to embarrass me. So what does he get? He gets time. I've called him a Bob Marley footballer historically because I think he looked too cool for school. He's too cool.
Yeah.
And now he's adding the intensity now off the ball. He's seeing things happening. It's not perfect. But I tell you what, you're absolutely right. If you project forward, you put that into centre midfield where if he makes a mistake, it's not a goal. He'll be more relaxed, more assertive. He can be more creative. He could drive more. And I said probably about a year and a half ago, I see him developing into a Victor Wanyama. And I stood by it. I got laughed at, but I stood by it because look at his body. He's only 20. What's he going to be like when he's 23? He is going to naturally fill out. He's going to be an absolute beast in there. And we've got to decide whether we buy somebody for 1 or 2 years, use him as a right back cover, which I wouldn't be against, and then comes on to centre midfield while he's inexperienced late in games, like we use Coquelin potentially or El Neni potentially. So one of them has to go from the squad to create a centre midfield berth for him or a new signing. And then use him as a right back cover to make sure we don't burn Bellerin out. But eventually that centre midfield holding position should be his if he keeps progressing as he does. And that'd be, to get from academy kid to do that for Arsenal Football Club to be a central pillar, that'd be a wonderful story.
Sure would.
So can I just quickly say on the too cool for school thing? I know exactly what you mean. What's really bothered me all along, I kind of talked about his mentality and his focus and stuff. I think that's all really anxiety with him. I think, that classic thing of acting cool because you're actually freaked out. And what I'm hoping we're seeing now in terms of focus and decision making and being cool on the ball, and his body language coming up to snuff is him building in confidence with better players around him, which will suit his particular game, that the too cool for school stuff goes away. You see him sometimes, like on the Salah goal, not to put too much blame on him, you see him jogging back. Well, I don't know what you guys were like when you were that age. If I had his speed, there's a lot of mistakes I might make in the game in terms of mentality or decision making. I would have fucking ripped back there knowing that I could get back into that box. But you see him I think he's absorbing the fact that he just fucked up. And of the 3 players, Jack, Xhaka and Maitland-Niles, he's the one who has the pace and is still in a position to get back there and cover and help out. But he jogs back. And it's not laziness. It's not lack of it's
just experience, isn't it? Lack of experience. Paul. He wasn't quite aware.
It's a guy who's kind of just choking the fact that he let Salah go, and it's in his head. Instead of, when Alexis loses the ball and immediately chases it, instead of Maitland-Niles saying, "Oh fuck," and rushing back, he goes, "Oh, no, it wasn't really my fault. Maybe, he's debating it in his head. Has he just fucked up? It's that maturity that confidence that comes that says, oops, get back in the game. That's what he should have done right then.
Fair enough. Look, I mean, you mentioned Alexis. I think we should get to him. He scores a goal that is, pure Alexis in some ways. He just wants it more. He gets into the position. I mean, we think of him as being a technically gifted player, but for someone who's getting criticized as not trying, I mean, certainly there's the ability to switch it on and try. I'm not saying he is always giving his full effort, but he does in that situation. He gets the goal. But then he gives away the third with the header that doesn't come off. Now, I have a little sympathy for him because he slips, and there was a lot of slipping on the day, mostly Arsenal players, which is a little weird since we played on our home pitch. But then he gets subbed, and this is a player that never used to get subbed. Now he's getting subbed at the end of games when we actually probably really need that special contribution. I know. Sorry, guys. I know. Yeah. She disagrees with my point, as do most people. But so I guess the question is, like, why all of a sudden is Alexis getting subbed at the end of the games? What do you think of the decision to sub him at the end of this game? And just to lay a little more at your plate, Clive, what do you put that third goal on him? I mean, I guess the easier way to say it is, what did you make of Alexis's day, and then the decision to take him off?
Okay, so if he'd have got substituted at half-time, I wouldn't have been surprised. That's how he was on the day. I mean, I can't tell you how...
couldn't you say that about Xhaka, about Jack, about Iwobi, about... I'm not trying to be the defender of Alexis. I'm just saying there's so much scrutiny on him specifically when there are players that are just as switched off or poor right now.
Yeah, so you're looking at the game, and you're looking at performance. You're looking at it, and I would have maybe said the same if I'd have watched it at home. I would have said, well, you know what, there's 3 or 4 of them. Iwobi, shocking, but this is a guy that's got a little bit of circumstantial stuff around him, right? So the contract situation, which is obvious, right? So we're now looking at him. The microscope is on him. The microscope is on Xhaka. It's on Bellerin. It's on Iwobi. Those 4 in particular, they are getting a lot of stick from the crowd. And Alexis is the one that's probably getting the most because his body language is so easy to read. And there were times when he was walking, and I mean walking 10 yards deeper than their Liverpool's back defence, and then the players would turn out towards him, and then he wasn't ready to receive it. He'd just wave them away, the back of his hand, go away, and they'd go turn out the other side. And I'm looking at this thinking, this is shocking. And the crowd is getting up and they're getting on him, and then suddenly he'll spurt into action and he'll do something and he'll pass it good or he'll pass it away, and the crowd will get onto him again. And I mean, it was such a Jekyll and Hyde performance, right? So he scores the goal, he sees the opportunity for the goal, he scores it, and when he came off, I don't think he was that bothered. It was all an act. On that heady trick he tried, I was working out in my garage today and I was watching the Spurs game, and he tried that exact move against Davinson Sanchez, and that got the foul for the first goal, where he's running, he tries to dribble you with his head and come inside, but this time he got red. And I think it was Salah, actually. I think he drove straight into the area. They pop it around, and Firmino was left in 3 yards of space and smashed it in. Do I blame him? I loved him to just run it down the sides because Liverpool weren't that threatening at the time. We were just getting a little bit of stability. But honestly, I sway from, are we better off without him? Then he scores the first goal, to he's damaging the whole club. Then he does a little move, plays a great pass. I mean, I don't know where I am on him. Because 1 minute I hate him, the next minute I love him. But what's happening is we need some direction, and he's our superstar player. He's not playing very well. We're all reading the papers. Most of the people want him out, but they want a replacement they can love equally.
Well, that's the thing.
Right?
I mean, Clive, just real quick, okay, if you want to sub him off in a game where he's playing poorly, that's one thing. If you want to sub him off late in a game where maybe he's switched back on and decided to try again, it's another thing. But when you're subbing him off and it's a Danny Welbeck coming on, or it's someone of that quality and caliber, Theo Walcott, with all due respect, I guess that's really the problem, isn't it? Love him or hate him, he can still turn up and do something. And right now, especially Welbeck in the form he's in, you don't expect anything.
There's nothing behind, right? So you're absolutely right. So, when it is not just performance, Eric, please don't get this right. It is what he was doing or not doing.
No, I follow you. And it's harder to see that on a TV screen because you don't see the whole pitch, so you don't see the players that aren't involved in the direct action.
Yeah, he just was not part of the team. And it's team first for me every single time. It's what you do for the team. Can you feel the game? Can you feel what's required? What are you doing for your teammate? Are you available? Are you working hard? Are you helping your mate out when he's got the ball under pressure? These are things I look for when I judge a player. When we're 1-0 down, what do you do? Do you go hiding? When we're 2-0 down, what do you do? And all I saw from him was disrespect to the club and shirt. And you've not heard me speak like this before, have you? Not like this. So you've got to trust me when I say this. If that had been 2-0 for 5 minutes longer, I dread to think what the atmosphere would have been like in that stadium and who would have got it
Or
first.
God forbid 3-0, 4-0, 5-0 because it was heading that way.
It would have been awful. It would have been awful, as bad as you've ever seen it. Right? So we got away with it. Not only did we get away with it, we went from the lowest to probably one of the highest moments I've ever seen. I mean, and that is just Arsenal at the moment. So I'm loath to jump on one side of the fence or the other. I'm just saying it exactly as I saw it and exactly as I felt. That's probably the safest space to be.
Can I just make one quick point about Alexis? Look, I agree there's something not right there, although I think we are reading into things about him now because of his contract situation that we didn't read into previously, and I'm not convinced we're seeing a different Alexis. I'm just convinced we're evaluating him differently based on circumstantial evidence, as you referenced. And I get part of the reason is because the end product hasn't been there, although he did score a goal in the day, and he has been very influential over the past few games, at least in decisive moments. But, I do think that this is where team balance is so important. Of course, a player like him is going to look like a liability when the midfield is a disaster, when the defensive positioning is a mess, when there's no structure. Players like Alexis and Ozil, less so Ozil, who is sort of, as Paul pointed out, really become a leader in the team, they need structure as a platform for them to do what they do because they're mercurial, because they're moody, because they can pop up with sensational moments and they can look like they have their feet screwed on backwards at times. And I just think, whether it's a Kevin De Bruyne or whether it's an Eden Hazard or whether it's an Alexis Sanchez, or whether it's a, let's say a Paul Pogba. I mean, Pogba's a little different because he can influence the whole game. But I think those kinds of players shine or struggle on the strength of the platform behind them to let them do the kinds of things they want to do. And I get it. Look, Alexis has not been in the form we know he can be in, but I do think a lot of the evaluation surrounding him is tied up with his contract situation, and understandably so. Yep. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he wants out. Maybe he's quit. Maybe he's done. That's not what I'm seeing, but I could be wrong. I just don't see a much different Alexis than I see when he plays with Chile or than I saw when he used to play with us, except for maybe a little less end product right now. Now, that's not tied into the question of whether we should sell or should have sold. It's just the question of where he is now. I just believe that when you've got a Xhaka Jack midfield that's so dysfunctional and was so dysfunctional in the first half, there's nothing Alexis is going to do. And then when he gives the ball away to give up the third goal, no one wants to look at the fact that why were we giving so much space at the edge of our area? Why didn't we close down? Nobody wants to look at that because they have their scapegoat ready, and it's Alexis. And I'm not sure that look, he's giveaways that kill us, but I'm not sure that one was so flagrant. So that's a soliloquy.
Can I just jump in quickly?
Yeah, please. Mm-hmm.
It's a great point, right? So, and on that third goal, Koscielny presses out, and he presses out because there's nobody there. There's no midfielder in front of him to go and do the job. So he presses out, Firmino's left, and they score. And so this is a team that plays football with no safety net. There is nothing in the middle of the pitch. And I've always said this, it's a one-man midfield, and we criticise that one man. And everyone else is trying to find areas of the pitch that they actually want to be in, that they like. They want to be, and it makes them look good. They're not playing for the team. There's no team structure. If we can get a platform, then maybe when Alexis loses it, as a fan group, we'd be a little bit more relaxed. But we know here comes a basketball game. Here comes Kevin Durant bounding down our middle to go and dunk it. That's what it looks like, right? We've got nothing there in the middle. And we had some fantastic midfield performances and highlights, but did we have a midfield? And that's how Arsenal play football.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, and I'll let you in on this, Paul, but I'm just saying, you put a really structured, disciplined, sort of tactically specific midfield in place. You really think Alexis is a liability in that situation? I mean, part of the reason Alexis feels like a liability is because there are so many liabilities right now. Iwobi was a liability. Xhaka was a liability. Jack, at least in the first half, from my viewing, was a liability in that he can't run with, to get back and cover the range that Xhaka can't run and cover. So, look, I know I come across as an Alexis apologist, and part of it is because I think it is crazy to me that this extremely talented player is being viewed as what's wrong with Arsenal when what's wrong with Arsenal is in the same areas it's always been wrong. There was an interesting poll that was put out on Twitter. I don't remember the account that put it out, and it's a nothing poll really, but I thought it was interesting because it said, which player would you most want gone in January? And the options were Alexis, Xhaka, Theo, and Giroud. And Alexis finished dominantly first, and Giroud finished dominantly last. And I just think it's interesting that this 31-year-old striker who's on the downward swing of his career, who never really hit the heights for us, is the one people most want to stay. And this mercurial superstar, who's the best player we've had since, Cesc left, arguably, is the one everybody wants gone. And that speaks a lot to how we're grading him right now. But
so why do you think that is, Elliot? Why do you think that is that result?
We've talked about this on the pod. People protecting themselves. They don't think he wants to be here, so they want him gone. The fault of the club in not selling him in the summer has now become the fault of the player in being ready to leave on a free. I think there are some people that want him gone because they want us to get money for him, and I fully understand that. But the way we hold,
he's going anyway.
Well, yeah, right. I get that, and I totally get that. But the way we hold some people to our heart, like Giroud, and we say, "Oh, he's a loyal man." Of course, he's a loyal man. He's making a great wage at a big club, and there was no one bigger that wanted him. And so, yeah, he's staying. You mean to tell me if Giroud was banging 35 goals a season for us on $100,000 a week, he wouldn't have been wanting to double his wages and go to Real Madrid? Circumstance winds up making heroes of some and villains of others in football. So, Paul, as far as Alexis, and I do want to start to wrap up, and I want to thank the listener, by the way, for putting up with the fact that I am daddy daycare today. There's no daycare for my beautiful daughter, whom I love. My wife is working, and so it has been a real challenge to record this podcast, and we wanted to put one out because we so adore you as well. But thank you for tolerating that challenge.
Look, Elliot, this is a family show.
Quite clearly.
That's what this has always been.
Quite clearly. As your reference to the aristocrats joke a couple episodes ago demonstrated. But, okay, Paul.
Indeed.
Jump in on Alexis here, where you stand on the debate. And also, look, if you're going to have Alexis in your... This is what drives me nuts. If you're going to have Alexis in there, and you're going to tolerate all the things he does, and he does some things that will drive you mad, the last 10 minutes he should be on the pitch. Because he's the one guy that in the last 10 minutes, for all of his flaws, can win you the game. And so it seems crazy to me to persist with him through a whole game of all the things that will drive you mad, but then be like, now we're going to bring on this guy who's not going to do anything for the guy who clearly could.
Okay, but so I was about to agree with you. On that point, though, we were a goal up. So he didn't need to win us the game. He needed to not lose us the game.
When he was taken off, we were level at 3.
Yeah, but there wasn't 10 minutes to go. That was a minute before the 90 or something. Anyway.
Fair point. Moving
right. On. Overall, I think you're right. I think the issue with Alexis is there's a separation between him and the team. You've seen Ramsey giving him a bollocking. You've seen Jack give him a bollocking, and Jack's only just back. Who the hell is he to give anybody a bollocking? But he's Mr. Arsenal, so and he's a damn good player. Let's be honest. And I think he thinks he has a feel for where the squad's at. We've heard of Koscielny kind of two-footing him in training. A two-footer on Alexis, that was last season. So there's clearly a divide between Alexis and the team, but it doesn't really matter. You have those players, and I think your main point is right. If we had a more structured defence and a better midfield, everything would be fine. Alexis will be getting what he thinks he needs to be effective for us, and people will stop being pissed off with him because the whole thing will be working better. The problem is the problem, and it's the same problem, which is certain parts. The midfield in particular just never quite works for us against the best teams.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say, and the point we kind of didn't debate in this game is, we were 3-2 up. What should we have done? Should we have? We kind of worked around the edges of this. Should we have sat back and defended? And I think the reality in this game was our defense and our midfield was just scrambled.
I would have sat back and defended. I think against Liverpool, their only real way of breaking you down usually is turning you over.
Yeah, but I think the issue here, and we saw 3 mistakes leading up to that final goal, is we were scrambled. They were scrambled defensively. I'm not
question.
sure we had the ability
turn of the tide, Paul,
to sit in.
Happened so unpredictably and so quickly and so unexpectedly that I think by the time we took a 3-2 lead, it surprised us as much as it did them. And I don't think there was enough time for us to adjust our approach.
We didn't react.
No.
We didn't react.
No, we didn't
react. We just thought, crikey, this is too good to be true. Let's just carry on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We just didn't react. So.
Well, I think it would have been really hard mentally to go into a let's be really solid at the back mentality, given the preceding, whatever it was, 80 minutes. It was going to be a hell of a job for either one of those two teams to suddenly become solid at the back. So I kind of understand why we did what we did.
Yeah, and I think Arsblog made a really good point on Twitter and in his writing about this. There are a lot of people that are going to say this game was a lot of fun. But this isn't fun. That first half wasn't fun. The fact that we had 5 minutes where we clawed back 3 goals made it a result. But, playing the worst half of football I can remember in recent memory for 45 minutes isn't fun. We
shouldn't be having Liverpool coming to our stadium and dictating the game the way they did and abusing us the way they did for 45 minutes. It's kind of a disgrace.
It is a disgrace.
It's kind of a disgrace that Arsene Wenger can't put together a midfield that represents the kind of football that he wants to be playing. I mean, it's season after season. I love you, Arsene. For fuck's sake, put together the midfield you want. Spend the money. Get the players. What the fuck are you doing?
Give them roles.
Right.
Give them jobs, Paul. Give them defined roles. Mm-hmm. Don't send out all these similar style players, all left-footed, and expect them to make it work. It's just ridiculous. And then we fans, and I do it, we judge them based on that. When it's not right, it's not reasonable. It's just not adult coaching and management, right? So you nailed it, Elliot. We go 3-2 up. We need a reaction. What are we trying to achieve now? Are we going to hold it? Or are we going to keep playing? Or are we going to sit in? Maybe take Iwobi off and bring Coquelin in and push Özil higher and make it a transition game. But at least we know what we're all doing, and then we get a common goal. Everyone can see it on the sidelines. Everyone can see it on the pitch. We get more aggressive in the tackle. What do? We keep bombing forward, overloading, more space, little tricks out of our area, getting caught, second phase, more pressure, more momentum. Eventually they get encouraged. Eventually they score, and we drop our lips and walk back to the halfway line. It's rubbish. It's not good enough. It's not good enough no longer. If we want to go to the next level, it's just not good enough to have that many players playing out of position, that many players being asked to do things they can't do to the maximum of their ability. And then we fans expect, I'm flipping on Alexis now, my love and hate. We expect him, the superstar, to accept all of this and just say, you know what, I'll give the best years of my career to this. I mean, let's be honest, would you?
No,
would you do it?
And look, I mean, you make this point. Ultimately, those attacking superstars, they're tricky ones. But, if you look at this team and he looks like what's wrong with it, and this isn't meant to be defensive of him, and I hate to boil it all down to him, I just think that misses the big picture. Squad construction's a problem. We've talked about this for years. Tim came up with his great analogy of it's like Arsene is trying to build the plane while it's in flight. There's too many number 10s, as you pointed out, Clive. There's not enough athleticism in midfield, but we have enough talent that we should be able to eke something out. What I will say is salvaging a point in that game from where it could have been salvages the season, because the low that could have been losing that game would have been enough to derail the entire season. And as Scott pointed out in his statistics section of the last pod, probably would have derailed any hope at top 4. As it stands now, we have a chance. We got a chance to laugh at United a little bit over their past few results, which have been phenomenal to enjoy. So it's not all doom and gloom. We have 2 tough, tricky fixtures coming up back-to-back now, at Palace and at West Brom, before we get Chelsea at our place. And, this is where the turnaround has to happen. I'll be very, very curious to see if the manager goes back to the back 3 or sticks with the back 4. And you know what it reminds me of, guys? You remember Alexis Sanchez was playing center forward this time last season, and things were going pretty well. And the manager just kind of stopped. And there's been some discussion that Alexis didn't want to play in that position. Who knows? But the point is he stopped. He went back to Giroud for a bit. We went into a lull. January was disgusting. February was despicable. And it wound up with us switching to the back 3 just to stabilize things, and we know where we went from there. The switch to the back 4 feels a little similar. the back three wasn't my favorite, but it was kind of working. It was kind of getting the job done, and we've changed it now off what seems like, maybe the Ramsey injury, maybe the performance against United being down, but it seems like it's just a done thing now. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in the next few games, whether it's back three or back four. But if we can right the ship, we still have a lot to play for this season. European competition is still alive. Top four is still alive. No one's catching City this year, so you can, if you can accomplish the rest of your goals, you can almost forgive yourself for being cut adrift from City, because everybody is. But, the turnaround has to start now, and getting a point there salvaged what I think could have derailed the season. Look, we're out of time. As you can tell, my daughter is not going to let me continue this any longer, which is fair. She deserves the attention. I want to thank everybody for putting up with this. Paul's on Twitter at Paz in my pants. Thanks, Paz.
Woohoo! It was a hell of a game.
Yes, it was. It was great for the neutral, and fuck them. Why did I just say that in front of my toddler? Anyway, pretend you didn't hear that. She didn't. She's watching Moana. It's all good. Clive's on Twitter at ClivePFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thanks very much, mate.
Dear listener, thank you for putting up with this. I know this was a fractured and not ideal podcast for a game that really deserved the right attention, but I think that Clive and Paul gave you enough of their insight to compensate for my distracted performance and the occasional guest appearance of Addison. So in any event, I hope you had a wonderful holiday. I hope you continue to have a wonderful festive period. Hopefully results go our way. We will come back and do a podcast following Palace before West Brom, and then one after that. That will be the least we could do as a result of what happened today. In any event, we appreciate it, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Palace 0.
Child Protective Services will be around in 20 minutes, Elliot.
Cheers.